You know that quiet moment late at night, when everything slows down and the world finally stops asking things from you. And there's just you and your thoughts. That's usually when it creeps in. That soft, reassuring idea. That somehow, somewhere, things will just work themselves out. That maybe you don't have to push so hard. That maybe if you wait just a little longer, something or someone will come along and fix it all. Maybe an opportunity, a person, a sudden burst of motivation. It feels comforting, almost like life has your back in ways you don't fully understand. But here's the uncomfortable question that tends to linger if you sit with it long enough. What if no one's coming? Not in a harsh, dramatic, everything is doomed kind of way, just in a quiet, honest, deeply human way. What if the change you've been waiting for isn't on its way? What if the breakthrough, the rescue, the turning point isn't something that arrives, but something that begins the moment you stop waiting? Because beneath this belief that something external will step in and save you, there's a powerful psychological pattern. And once you recognize it, it changes how you see your own life. Take the person who lives in the future, the one who always believes that everything will be different soon. They tell themselves, next week I'll get serious, or after things calm down, I'll finally focus. There's always a version of their life just around the corner where everything is better organized, more disciplined, more aligned, and it feels real. It feels like progress, just thinking about it, but what's actually happening is something psychologists call temporal distancing. It's your brain's way of pushing responsibility into the future to make the present feel lighter. You get relief now by imagining a better later. The problem is that later version of you never arrives. It's always slightly out of reach, always delayed, always waiting for another perfect moment that never quite comes. Then there's the person who's waiting for permission. This one is harder to spot because it doesn't look like waiting. It looks like caution, like thoughtfulness, like responsibility. They hesitate before making decisions. They replay conversations in their head. They look for signs that they're on the right path. They want someone more experienced, more confident, more qualified to confirm that they're allowed to move forward. And underneath all of that is a deep need for validation. It often comes from growing up in environments where approval mattered more than initiative, where mistakes were discouraged rather than explored. Over time, you stop trusting your own voice. You start believing that someone else must know better, so you wait. But the truth is, most people are too busy navigating their own uncertainty to guide yours. That moment of official approval you're hoping for, it rarely comes. And life doesn't pause while you wait for it. And then there's the one who looks like they're doing everything right. They're learning, researching, consuming information, preparing endlessly. They watch videos, read books, take notes. They say things like, I just want to be ready, or I don't want to mess it up. On the surface, it looks productive. It even feels productive. But sometimes, it's just fear wearing a very convincing disguise. Because as long as you're preparing, you don't have to face the risk of actually starting. You don't have to deal with failure, rejection, or the uncomfortable reality that things might not go as planned. Psychologically, this is avoidance wrapped in action. It's your brain protecting you from discomfort while making you feel like you're moving forward. But you're not. You're standing still in a very sophisticated way. You're stuck in almost ready, almost confident, almost there, and almost can last for years if you let it. There's also a quieter type, the one who genuinely believes that things will work out on their own. They trust the process. They believe in timing, in alignment, in the idea that what's meant for them will find them. And to some extent, that mindset can be healthy. It reduces anxiety, it builds resilience, it helps you stay hopeful. But there's a line where hope turns into passivity, where trust replaces action, where believing becomes an excuse not to try. This is where something called learned helplessness can quietly take hold. It's when you start to believe that outcomes are outside your control, even when they're not. So you wait. You expect life to move you instead of you moving through life. And while you're waiting, nothing changes. What's interesting is that all of these patterns share the same core idea. The belief that something outside of you will eventually step in and make things different. That change is something that happens to you rather than something you create. And that belief is incredibly comforting. It takes the pressure off. It allows you to delay, to hesitate, to stay in familiar territory, but it also quietly keeps you stuck. Because the truth, the one that's a little harder to accept, is that no one is coming to save you. Not the perfect opportunity, not the perfect mentor, not the perfect version of yourself. And strangely enough, that realization isn't meant to discourage you, it's meant to free you, because the moment you stop waiting for something external to change your life is the moment you realize that you have more control than you thought, that you don't need permission, that you don't need perfect timing, that you don't need to feel completely ready. And maybe this is the part most people avoid sitting with, because it asks something from you. It asks you to act without guarantees, to move without certainty, to take responsibility not just for your outcomes, but for your direction. And that can feel heavy. But it's also where things start to shift. Slowly, quietly, almost imperceptibly at first. It doesn't mean everything becomes easy. It doesn't mean fear disappears or uncertainty goes away. But it shifts the responsibility back to where it actually belongs. With you. And that's where your power is. Not in waiting for clarity, but in creating it through action. Not in hoping for confidence, but in building it by doing things before you feel ready. And here's something subtle but important. Action doesn't always feel heroic. Sometimes it feels inconvenient, uncomfortable, even boring. It's showing up when you don't feel like it. It's choosing progress over perfection in small, almost invisible ways. That's the part no one romanticizes, but it's the part that actually changes your life. So maybe the real question isn't whether someone is coming to save you. Maybe the question is, where in your life are you still waiting? Waiting for motivation to show up? Waiting for someone to notice you? Waiting for the right moment to begin? And what would change if you stopped waiting altogether? Because it doesn't have to be a massive, life-altering move. It can be something small, something almost unnoticeable from the outside. A decision you've been putting off, a step you've been overthinking, a risk you've been avoiding. That's where it starts, not with a dramatic transformation, but with a quiet shift. A moment where you decide, even briefly, that you're not going to wait anymore. And maybe that's the real wake-up call. Not that no one is coming to save you, but that you were never as powerless as you thought. So now the question becomes a little more personal. Which part of this feels familiar to you? Where do you see yourself in these patterns? And more importantly, what are you going to do about it?